I am Pastor Jamie Larson McClune. I'm a pastor at Bethel in Muskego and Gloria Day in Menominee Falls, and a member of our Synod's Mission Table, the group that hosts these Inspired for Mission conversations each month and works to help folks around the Synod think about God's mission and how we might join God's mission. Tonight, we are going to watch a video about community mapping. This video is part of a series that is available on the Synod website at milwaukeesynod.org/renewal. There are at least 5 videos there now. These are videos that some congregations are working through. If you go to that website, you'll be able to see the videos, see associated resources, and find out about how your congregation might have a coach to walk you through this renewal process that we're calling Adventures in Renewal. Our video tonight is video number 5. So when we start watching it, we'll start with the beginning, which makes sense. And then we're gonna skip a little bit that is recap. So if you've not seen videos 1 through 4, some of that recap makes sense. Some of it won't make a lot of sense to you. So when you notice us skipping ahead a little bit in the video, that is on purpose. You will also hear a reference in this video to Lydia and finding Lydias in your neighborhood. And if you haven't participated in any of the renewal work, you may not be familiar with who Lydia is. So just as either an introduction or a refresher on who Lydia is, I'm going to read a scripture from Acts that we often use for dwelling in the Word. We're just going to hear it tonight, and then we're going to get the video started so that we can get to our community mapping experiment and our discussion. But first I'm going to read from Acts chapter 16, verses 6 through 15. Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. When they came to the border of Mysia, they tried to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to. So they passed by Mysia and went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia standing and begging him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." After Paul had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. From Troas, we put out to sea and sailed straight for Samothrace. And the next day we went on to Neapolis. From there we traveled to Philippi, a Roman colony and the leading city of that district of Macedonia. And we stayed there several days. On the Sabbath, we went outside the city gate to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down and began to speak to the women who had gathered there. One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. When she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us to her home. "If you consider me a believer in the Lord," she said, "come and stay at my house." And she persuaded us. So I think that we are ready to start the video. Is that right, Monty?
Hello, and welcome back as we continue on these adventures and mission renewal together. In this video, we're going to walk through a fairly simple exercise that can help open up the whole congregation's imagination around the question of who are our people. Our grounding scripture today is from Jeremiah 29, verse 7. These were words from the prophet Jeremiah to those who were living in exile in a foreign land. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you, for in its welfare you will find your welfare.
Well, now let's move on to the simple practice for this video, a community mapping exercise. So this process of mission renewal begins with listening to God and looking for God's activity in the world so that we can join in. An important step along that path is taking time to notice where God has planted us and what is going on in the community just outside of our congregation. Sometimes that involves slowing down just enough and asking God to open our eyes to what is stirring in the area right around our congregation. Ultimately, this practice can lead us to a more expansive understanding of who our people are. And it helps us begin to look closely for who the Lydias might be around us. You remember Lydia from the story in Acts 16, where Paul and his companions are on that journey, and at one point are led to a woman named Lydia, a business owner who is not at first a partner of their movement, but God has been working in her heart to be their partner in ministry. This practice of community mapping can help us begin to see who God has placed around us, who might be partners in ministry as well. In the words from Jeremiah that we opened with, they've always inspired me. In that story, the people of God were actually prisoners in a foreign land, carted off to live away from their home territory. But the prophet encourages them to seek the welfare of where they're planted. And the promise is clear. In their welfare, you will find your welfare. So seek the good of where you're planted. As we seek God's guidance in helping us connect more deeply with those outside of our congregation, the simple practice of mapping our community can be a profound first step. Often we think we know what's right around us, but in almost every case, by slowing down and taking time to really map it out, we learn where we are already connected and what connections God might be inviting us to make.
If you don't already have a big piece of paper and some markers and other writing utensils, pause the video here and collect those things. Okay, do you have them? Now, place a cross in the middle of the paper. That's to represent your church. In just a little bit, you're going to pause this video and take some significant time as a team to add whatever details you can to this map from memory. Fill the blank space with anything you can remember. Streets, parks, schools, businesses, residences, farms, whatever it is. But, this is key, don't hop on the internet just yet to try to fill in the blank space. This first part of the exercise is to highlight what is known and what remains to be learned about the area right around your church. Here are a few things to think about as you create your map. First, no detail is too small. Add anything you know. For example, if you know the last name of the family who lives directly across the street from your church, add it to your map. If you know the name of the owner of the coffee shop on the corner, add that. All of this is part of your congregation's God-given context. It's all a part of where God has planted you. Second, try to avoid feeling ashamed about the blank spaces on your paper. Remember, in this process, there's no blame and no shame. Those blank spaces, if there are things you can't remember or don't know much about, those blank spaces are just an invitation to learn more. Third, make sure that everyone in your team takes time to fill in what they know. Make it a group activity. Everyone notices different things, and we need each other to be the body of Christ in the world. Some groups might be tempted to let one or two people really direct this map exercise maybe because they have lived in the area the longest. But it's really important to make sure that every single person has a chance to add what they know or remember about the area around the church. Folks new to the area will notice things that maybe are taken for granted or overlooked by those who've lived there a long time. So find a way to make sure every person on your team has a chance to add what they know. The point here is actually not to make a super accurate map. The point is to see what the church's perceptions are about the area around them. What and who do we know? What and who don't we know? All of this leads us to, how can we be curious about what God is already up to in our surrounding area and how we can join in?
So we're going to take 5 minutes to just begin sketching kind of a practice map. This doesn't have to be the map that you would put up in your congregation. This is an introduction to this practice. So as Pastor Matt said during the video, no blame, no shame. Just give it a try for your congregation's neighborhood. See what you can come up with tonight and be thinking about who you might share this practice with. And so we'll start with about 5 minutes here. And there's some more instructions there on the screen for you. That was just 5 minutes. So hopefully you got a little bit of a start and has some things to think about. We are going to continue. There's just a few more minutes left on the video, and then we'll have some discussion.
This can be a really powerful exercise. Some congregations are more rooted in a particular neighborhood. Some are in more sparsely populated locations or located between city centers. But wherever you are planted, there are people, businesses, and other community spaces that are nearby. And Jeremiah's words echo in our hearts. Seek the welfare of the city you are in. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Between now and the next video, invite others to contribute to this map with you. And then, most importantly, hold some space for conversations with them around the questions you talk through today. Just like in previous steps in this process, it is actually in the reflection time that the key learnings come. So where do you feel connected already on that map? Where are you not connected? Who might be some of the Lydias around you? And what might God be nudging you to pay attention to? These questions and more will guide our next steps on these adventures in renewal.
Summary notes. First, this community mapping exercise can help us become more aware of what and who are immediately surrounding our congregation. This exercise is meant to be a catalyst for curiosity. Second, the real gift of this map will come in its ongoing use. Part of your field work will be to put it up publicly and find ways to engage others. One congregation gave it to their Sunday school kids, who really had fun filling it in with what they knew. Third, the discussion questions are the real key here. It will be important to hold ample time for curious discussion with both your team and others who engage or contribute to the map. Field work. First, invite others in the congregation to add to this map and hold space for the discussion questions with them. Second, take notes on the learnings from both your team and anyone else who adds to the map, so you can have an ongoing learnings log. Continue to use this log as a team throughout your work.
So we're just going to stay in our own small group here for discussion. And the first question I have is really just, what did you notice as you worked on your map?
I was just going to say, I wrote down a lot of businesses that I either interact with or neighbors and people who from my church live nearby the building.
Nice. So you have some connections in your neighborhood already.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about you, Sonia?
Well, I noticed that when I was drawing my map that I know that our crossroads are two main streets in Kenosha, Green Bay Road and Washington. And so as I'm drawing what's right around my my congregation is other businesses, some the houses and stuff like that, things that have changed. But I noticed that as I was putting each little business, I could remember, and going further and further, I remember there, another business that's next to it, and so on. And then I realized that most of these places that are around my congregation now were not there when I started going to that church. And I just thought of all of the growth that that neighborhood has had as far as the businesses. And then I started thinking about the growth I've been through going, while I've been going to that congregation. So yeah, and it just goes on and on and on. So I kind of like that.
Some good opportunities to be asking what God might be up to in your neighborhood, it sounds like. Anyone else want to share what they noticed about this practice?
I felt like I was really clear for like what's right around the church, but then like a little layer out and it got a lot fuzzier. So it was interesting for me to figure out where did my knowledge kind of end, actually. I had this circle of knowledge and then it got pretty fuzzy.
I noticed that I'm a lot more clear on the route I usually drive to church. There's another route I can take and sometimes take home. And I know the stuff that's on the way. But when trying to put it on a map, that was a lot harder. Um, so that might be God nudging me to change up my habit and then pay attention a little more on my drive. As I think Dr. Rose showed in the video, there are lots of discussion questions that can be used with this process. So I'm just going to ask a couple of those. And some of them, some of you have maybe already answered a little bit, but some of those might be some things you didn't think about as you were doing the map. But the first question is, what was the easiest thing to add to the map, and what does that tell you? Pastor Kevin, you kind of answered that for your neighborhood, but you might have other thoughts too. So again, what was the easiest thing to add to the map, and what does that tell you? Melissa.
I added the people that use our facility. So we have a daycare, we host a memory cafe, Alcoholics Anonymous. What else did I write? A Suzuki music class, UWM musicians who rehearse and do concerts, and so all of those, I guess, shared space folks that are users of those were easy to write down very quickly.
Yeah, those existing connections. Thank you. I think my answer is similar to the direction Melissa was going, in that the people I interact with most often, um, including the person down the street who calls sometimes, and when he has family in town, and asks if he can use our parking lot for the extra cars. I know that's probably the neighbor I interact with most, and that was one of the first people I put on my map.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. That's the coffee shop that's right next to the church, the coffee shop that's across the way, the library, right? The bakery that I go to. Like, it is definitely the places that I go to on our block, that's next to the church, were the easiest. I know it's like there's this whole strip of commercial establishments, and the ones I go to were easy to put in, and then all the others were a little fuzzier. Like, well, I think there's a restaurant and maybe a doctor's office and something else there. And
Well, and the next question on the list, and feel free as things come to you to answer questions that we've already talked about too. But the next question on the list is, what do you notice about the blank areas on your map? Again, not in a way that causes shame or blame, just noticing about those blank areas. Kevin, you unmuted. Pastor Kevin.
Yeah, for me, that was generally like the residential areas, like where there were homes.
Yeah, I have a big blob called single family neighborhood. And that might be one of those prayer walk invitations, not for this season. I'm not that hardy.
I
But
kind
for
of
the
did the
spring.
same thing with parks and schools, and then lots of single family housing or apartment. I don't know much about those areas.
Yeah. Though this season, a neighborhood drive works too. And you know what? This might be a great season for a neighborhood drive because people have their homes decorated. Prayer drive. Very careful prayer drive. Anyone else? What did you notice about the blank areas?
The other one I couldn't think of, there's a Dairy Queen and a bar, and I knew there was a business between the two of them, and I couldn't picture what it was. And then I decided it was my own blind spot, or no judgment, but it's a vaping business. And I couldn't think of that in the moment when we were doing the exercise. And after I stopped writing, it's like, oh yeah, that vaping place.
Yeah, not something on your agenda, it sounds
No.
like, to pay attention to. Are you hearing any invitations, or what invitations are you hearing from this short practice? Alternatively, or related, who might you listen to, or where might you do some listening in some of the spaces on your map?
Yeah, I think that second question is basically what my answer was to the first, is that I think it would be interesting to have a conversation with somebody that has been just like in my community longer than I have. I've been in this congregation for a little under a year and lived in the area for about 3. Um, just because like it reminds me, like for instance, like across the street, a different direction of the schools is the like, can't remember the exact name of it. It's like an Irish community center. It's like Celtic something. And the only reason I know of that is because, people at my church have made reference to that existing. I don't know anything about it. It seems just to be like a building that I don't see a lot of traffic from, but it makes me aware that there are many in my community that know more than I do about what's going on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wrote down in one of the neighborhoods on the one side of the main road past my congregation, I wrote single family neighborhood. On the other side, I wrote, we know many neighbors. I don't personally know them, but I know folks in the congregation are connected with many people. So I wonder what some listening opportunities might be there. We also have a nursing home down the street. And that's a place we used to be connected to before I arrived at the congregation, and we're not anymore. And now I'm more curious about that.
I'm more curious about parks. This past summer, we have a farmer's market in a park near our church, and we developed a relationship taking the extra stuff at the end of the day because they operate on a Sunday, and we picked up the extra produce and took it to a congregation that has a food pantry. And it made me wonder, there are about a lot of other parks that are nearby where I know some Sundays when I show up to warm up for choir, there are a lot of people in the park I can visibly see a few blocks away playing with dogs or small children, and wondering if we have opportunities with other park related.
Yeah, that sounds like a really amazing connection between the congregation, what's going on in the park, and the food pantry. Did anyone hear or notice as they were drawing and thinking, are there some Lydias, some potential Lydias who come to mind in those spaces? That might be a
Uh,
deep question. Oh, Sonia's got an answer. Go
no,
ahead.
well, I know there has to be, because it's a lot of little businesses, and all of those businesses, whether they are mom and pop or franchise, have people that work in all of those little businesses, and you always have an opportunity to engage with people like instead of going through the drive-through at McDonald's. With this is a bad example because I haven't even gone to McDonald's in months, but instead of going through the drive-through, parking and walking in, and going up and talking to, get your order and such like that. But I realized that when I'm coming up to the corner, I'm always like this, oh, I'm going to church for whatever reason. But I go right past a mini golf that's been there for years before me, and I've never actually stopped there. They even have a fruit stand that's out there doing, for the spring, summer season or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'll stop there next time. And I keep saying next time. And it's like doing exercises like this makes you understand that this too is something that you need to stop and pay attention to the flowers instead of just walking by. And I have, like you said, we have a certain route we go and everything. And I have, oh, I'm going to church, or I'm going to, Walmart wasn't there before. It used to be on another street. So I'm either going there or there. And it's like, oh, there are a lot of little bitty businesses all up in here, and I've never even gone into them. I've seen them pop up, but I just walk or drive past because I'm on the highway right there. But I think for the next, I don't know, I've never done miniature golf, by the way, so that's something that I have on a bucket list. And I'm like, I want to take my granddaughter to, but instead of going to, I think they have it at Action Territory, maybe, I don't know. But instead of going to one of those places, go to this little place that's probably a mom and pop place, and engage with the people that run the business and have, a little fun. That's if it's still open next year. I don't even know if it's still open. I know the building is still there. But until I actually stop and smell the roses, I won't know, because you're driving, too fast to go by. So slow down and engage. I think that would be my biggest thing. And I realized, what was the easiest thing to add to my map from the questions from before? The easiest thing to add to my map are the things that I can see when I'm sitting in the parking lot. Not necessarily places that I've stopped to go to, and then I'm thinking about, oh yeah, there's a church down, there's a Baptist church down the road that I've never been to. There's the nursing home that we send stuff to, but I've never actually gone in there. And so on and so on and so on. I can keep going, but it's like, I'm not stopping to smell the roses. I'm not being still, like, it's just a different opportunity to do that. It's one thing to engage and do things in church or an activity that has to do with your congregation, like Bible study or, something outside of service. But it's different to actually take it upon yourself or a few people. A lot of people don't want to do things like that alone, and just go and enjoy, the business. There's a Summer Moon places. I don't like sitting in coffee shops, or I didn't, because my experience was no shame, but my experience with Starbucks, and it just always seemed always so busy, and there was nothing like whatever, and too expensive. So this place called Summer Moon opened up, And one of my friends dragged my butt in there, and I like going there. We go there once a week now. And you can just sit, I can't sit outside anymore, but you just sit inside, outside, and just have a conversation. It's slowed down, people doing things all around you, but it doesn't seem as busy as other places, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sonia. I love that. The two things that will stick with me from what you said were, one, slow down. And then toward the beginning of your answer, you said about, I think it was about the mini golf course, next time, next time, next time. That feels like the Holy Spirit nudging us all, maybe, nudging me anyway, through this exercise to stop saying that, oh, next time, when I have more time. And I think that next time is related to our inclination to keep going at full speed, or just focus on the destination and not the journey. I mean, even getting to Walmart or the coffee shop, there's a journey. Well, my last question for us tonight, and maybe you can answer this tonight, maybe it's something you'll think about over the next couple days, is who might you continue this conversation with? Whether that's watching the video and building a map, or grabbing a friend and trying, going into one of those new businesses, or stopping someplace on your commute that you normally wouldn't. How might you continue this conversation?
Well, I'll speak for Kingo because I know we are maybe getting close to requesting a coach because we've been talking about this for a while. And we have not yet put together a small team, but that is coming up for discussion at our January council meeting. So I think there is going to be more conversation about it as Kingo approaches, making it more formal.
Oh, fantastic.
Melissa, just so you know, I don't know how many people are even interested in being on your team, but if you have 2 or 3 people that are interested and you want to move ahead, that's enough people to have a team.
Good to know.
I was a coach, so the team I worked with, it was 3 people,
Okay,
and I made 4. So
okay. And I
just so
saw,
you can stop that next time. We're
okay.
gonna do it. We're gonna do it now. Not to put any pressure on you, but I just want you to understand, because there are some congregations that believe they have to have 4 to 6 people, and you don't. If you only have 2 people, just get started, because that can be part of the process of learning how to ask for people that have certain gifts to be involved in that type of process. So reach out about a coach now and ask questions that you might have so that you can take it with you to your meeting.
Will do.
So
I saw that we have 2, Danette and Pastor Carolyn were both in the video, and I know they're both coaches, and I think we have one other woman from our congregation that is also a coach. So a few of the others are peripherally involved, and we've been kind of doing some praying and reformulating some teams, trying to figure out how we're going to approach this. But good idea to reach out for a coach now.
Thanks, Sonia, for sharing that expertise based on your experience as a coach. I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any thoughts before we close for the evening? Well, thank you for joining us. But I want to let you know, and anybody who sees the recording know, that our next Inspired for Mission conversation is going to be on Tuesday, January 28th. We are going to have a guest joining us, the Reverend Dave Daubert. He's going to be talking a little bit with us about a book he wrote, very short, accessible book called The Invitational Christian. So he'll be sharing with us, I think, some practices and some wisdom about being inviting. And we want to make sure everyone knows we're going to put out the first chapter of that book, very short. We have permission to put out the first chapter in advance of that conversation. We're not going to do it right away because I feel like we all have enough to be doing this season of the year without reading even a short chapter. But to benefit from and participate in that conversation, you do not have to have read the first chapter or the book. Just show up and be curious.